Hey family, I had an idea that I kind of wanted to share with you. Well, not necessarily ideas, but kind of like memories, meditations, thoughts. So, I know some of you are getting upset that I'm reading the Arabic and making mistakes. But hear me out on what I have to say to that because I still want to keep doing it. So, hear me out. For example, one day I was in one of my geography class and there was an immigrant girl from Brazil, and she started getting really red in the face and she was nervous because she had to give a presentation. And I comforted her and tried to help her because she was nervous that people were going to make fun of her for her English. She spoke Portuguese, her English was good, but she still had a lot of levels to go. And I remember how she said, "Do you think that I can get the professor to pass me? Maybe she'll understand." And her eyes were getting all red, and she's like, when girls are going to give a presentation and they're emotional, the last thing you want is red eyes because you don't want your audience to know that you were nervous. And I comforted her. She did end up doing it, and I was changed after that because I saw how nervous she was about her English skills. Let me give another example. I also um, help a lot of people from Latin America with their English. And in the beginning, I would, get a little more short with them to learn. Like, they'd be like saying a word, and I'd be like, no, 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 I told you it was like this, remember? Come on. Like, I was a little strict with some, uh, but nicer with others. And I decided they're already they're in a new country, they're new here. I don't need to be mean to them. I'm just going to help them, and they need to practice. And the best way they can practice is by reading aloud and making mistakes and getting familiar visually with the words. And what I can say is that I really learned a lot from them, and I really became humble. And since I've spent so much time in the immigrant zones, living there, living in the squalor, they would have broken English and I'd have broken Spanish, but we still had friendship and camaraderie, and both of us learned from each other based off our mistakes. And also, I'd like to say, I was in a French class, and I remember the very first day of class, the professor literally was like, "This is the alphabet," and we went through the alphabet, and then each person had to stand up and say, "Je m'appelle," and then say their name. And everybody was making mistakes, and we're all like red in the face and laughing because we got to stand in front of the class and, humble ourselves to the fact that we're going to butcher. Because the French language, what's so interesting about that language is that it's not spelled the way it sounds, and you want to pronounce it the way it's spelled, and you can't do that. And all of us became so humble after that. And I also had a lot of Filipino friends that I was in class with, and they'd speak broken English, and I still understood them, and we still were connecting, firing off ideas. Like, we didn't even care that the words were improper because we were connecting and we were talking, and our brains quickly identified the word, and then we moved on. Like, I spend more time around people who don't speak good English than I do good English. And there's two different ways in which like my brain will work in that moment. Like when I have to, speak this very concentrated, academic, perfect English grammar with someone, the tone gets very serious and stern. And when I'm speaking like another language, it's almost like you take on the feeling and emotions of that language. When I speak Spanish, I'll feel a certain way. When I'm trying to speak French with another people, it's like you bring on that culture onto you. I don't know how to explain it if you never experienced it. When I am trying to speak Italian to some of my family members, right? There's a different feeling you get. It's like the language has an essence to it. It has a connection to it. And from what I've seen from every serious Muslim, they say like, okay, you have to know Arabic. You have to get connected with the real language. You can't be intimidated by it. You got to go into it. And it's like, that makes sense from anyone who's had to study another language. It's like, if I just read the English part, yeah, I'm going to get it, but this is an experience. I'm reading the Quran for the very first time. I'm never going to get that back. It's the very first time. And I feel so connected and invested in the study of the Quran when I read the English, and then I read the Arabic part, and then I look at the actual like calligraphy. It's like, what? Like my mind gets more blown, and I like trying. Like it's amazing because I'll read poetry in Spanish, and it's written in like a very eloquent type of Spanish. And I'm like, I don't understand that word, but I can pronounce it anyways. And I keep practicing, and the next time I'll come across it, I'll look at the definition, and I'll do that. But I can't stop at every single word. I need to flow through the first time. Then on another book with another translation, I'll read it and then read it again and go again and again and again. It's like I'm going to read so many different texts about it. Like there's a journey ahead. This isn't just a one hit quit. I mean, there's a lot to think about in the Quran. There's a lot that you can think on philosophically. Anyone who has said that it's like a dry bones, boring book obviously hasn't read it. Because even with this text translation that I have right now, I get it. And it's like, it's broken and it's not the same. And I want to finish it to show respect to the person who made the book. Right? As somebody who reads a lot of books, I'm going to show respect to the author and I'm going to finish it. I'm not the type of person who doesn't really finish books unless they totally burn out and they're just incredibly boring, right? I mean, I'm not going to read the chemistry book twice, but the Quran is a text that you can read again and again and again, and it's going to highlight different parts in your brain depending on what you're doing in your life at that time. Like, so I'm going to keep that copy and I'm going to get other copies. Just like it's fun to have and valuable to have different translations of the Bible, right? I mean, it's just so cool. I don't know, family. So if you don't like the Arabic parts, just fast forward. But I feel so empowered if I tell somebody like, oh, you're reading the Quran, they'll tell me, and I'm like, yeah. And guess what? I'm like, what? I'm like, and I'm reading it too in Arabic. They're gonna be like, what? You doing what? And I'm like, yeah. They're like doing something else with their life. Maybe they're doing something equally cool, or maybe they're like maybe slacking off, and maybe they're like, holy crap, you did that. Maybe I can do that too. And maybe they'll go read like Don Quixote in Castilian Spanish, right? I mean, who knows? The possibilities are literally endless. So understand that like this is my first time reading the Quran, and I'm going to follow what inside tells me to do. I'm going to talk when it tells me to talk. I'm going to tell you the thoughts that come inside my brain when I read the words, because that's the coolest part, is when you see somebody like learn, and then different ideas and feelings and emotions come in my head when I read the words, and different ideas and images come in my mind when I see the actual like calligraphy. I think I go to museums a lot. I like to stare at art. I like to stare at the clouds. I'll stare at water and just watch fishes. Like, when you look at the Quran historically, you're looking at so much more than just reading it and getting through with it, right? And the sound of me trying, the action of me trying, the memory of me trying is something special. And I value that. And I'm going to continue to like explore it. And I'm going to make mistakes in the language. But that to me is not something important. You know how much stress I'd get in my life if I was like trying to interrupt people all the time if they said something in English incorrectly? No one would like want to hang out with me. There's a way you can do it, and there's a way you shouldn't do it. Like if I'm having a conversation with somebody, like trying to attempt to have a conversation in Arabic, that's a good moment to do it. But like when I read Buddhist texts, there's some names in there that I totally butcher, but it's still cool to read it. You're connecting with that actual name. And like I said, people pronounce my names in so many different ways, and it doesn't bother me. I don't know, it's just maybe that's a blessing. I don't really care about those kinds of things. Eventually it'll get better and better. Practice makes perfect. But if I like stop reading the Arabic, and it's like they're like, oh, we'll do it privately. Why? I'm not embarrassed. Anyone who's taken a language class is so humbled by the fact that the whole class is watching you totally butcher your presentation or your oral exam, right? I remember going in for my oral exam for my French teacher was going to quiz me. You have to have this conversation. You don't know exactly what he's going to say, and you have to be able to respond within a certain amount of time. And I was so thankful that it was private, when I had the final exam. But I was also like, you know what? Maybe I would have done better if people were watching me. Then I would have like concentrated harder if my classmates would have been watching me while I took that oral exam. It's easier to shame in privacy, but it's braver to make a mistake publicly that isn't like detrimental to your honor. Me messing up in Arabic is not a dishonor, it's an honor because I'm trying to talk to the creator in that language. And if he's all knowing and all wise, right, he don't care. I mean, he's gonna like, he knows your heart, so he knows you're trying, so it's like the intent, the action, right? I mean, it makes me happy. So, I mean, I can't stop doing something that makes me happy just because it annoys certain people, but just fast forward it. And I don't read every single one in Arabic. The ones that I really feel like, oh, I want to say that. Like, that's probably going to sound really cool, and I want to read it, and I can say that I did that. You know what I mean, family? So, come on.